Hey everyone, so this is going to be the last video in a while. First, I initially thought that I would have taken a break after I made the video on how to beat the Magnus Sicilian, but I still have like a lot of notes on a lot of different openings, so I figured that I would finish this project on covering 1 d4 d5. Just like covering the most challenging options we've covered already now. The Queen's Gambit declined, all the variations there essentially in the orthodox, and also we've covered the Jabava London. So what's left now is basically the London system, and sidelines such as like the Collie or the Tory attack are less critical. So I feel like anyone could put work, like spend like an hour on each variation and just be completely fine. But of course in the future I will make a video on that. So I also wanted to make this video also to kind of like advertise my coaching, because I am offering chess lessons I've taught people up to the level of 2100 online, and I also offer theory consultation. So if you are like a higher rated player and you need a direction to study theory, because that's kind of my specialty. I feel like that would be quite a useful, something useful that I can offer. So yeah, feel free to check the link up here for details on my coaching and my credentials. So let's talk about the London system. This happens after d4, d5, or knight f6. It can often transpose, where the white either plays the move bishop f4 in the second move here, or after knight f3, knight f6 chooses the move bishop f4. Now, in this video we'll be talking about the main line, which is the move c5. And the point is that we're happy to allow white to take on c5, similar to like a Queen's Gambit, where we're reducing white's control over the center if white decides to take on c5. So white normally plays the move pawn to e3. And the reason that I call this video the Finesse the London system is because I believe that the London system offers a lot of attacking chances, especially against an unprepared opponent. So oftentimes white wants to play the move c3, bishop d3, knight b d2, knight b to d2, and either castle short or delays casting short, so they can go for maybe knight e5, bring the other knight to f3, and even attack with g4, g5. So there are always these like interesting attacking ideas, even if white does castle short, which we will see in this game. Actually, I don't think, probably white castle short in this game. I don't remember entirely, but we'll look at this game and we can see how kind of Nihal Sarin in this game against Georgiev is able to create quite a powerful attack, even if let's say the computer says that the position is completely equal, because I think that we need to have this human touch to kind of navigate the tricky lines and avoid any lines that may be unnecessarily complicated. So in this position, in this video, I'll be recommending the move e6. Now, I want to delay the development of the knight to c6 because oftentimes, let's say after the move pawn to c3, I want to recommend the move bishop d6 with the idea that we want to go queen c7, we want to go knight b to d7 and aim for the move e5. And if white ever takes on d6, then we're perfectly happy here with a very good structure, knight c6, and even considering pawn to e5, or even oftentimes we go for knight c6, b6, bishop b7, and only then go for e5. And this central break really frees our position. And instead, after knight b to d2, we will be looking at two moves here. Either the move bishop d6, going for a similar idea, where there are moves like bishop g3, dc5 is one challenging move, and kind of the downside of playing bishop d6 right now is because dc5 forces our bishop to move again, but that's going to be fine for black. And also this move bishop b5 check. This is a bit annoying, but there are some interesting ideas here as well. Instead, we can also play the move knight c6 in this position, with the idea of after c3 going for bishop d6. And normally, as I said before, I don't want to put my knight on c6 so early, but I believe that this position is still okay if you know what you're doing. Either way, in this game, black played the move knight c6, and after knight b to d2, then they went for e6. So actually, they transpose into what we know, what we're also going to look at. After c3 and bishop d6, white plays the typical move bishop g3, saying that if you now take on g3, then white is perfectly happy to open up the h-file and get a strong attack. So white decides to castle here, and black decides to castle, and white plays bishop d3. And after the move b6 here, the main move is queen e2, preparing e4 in the future, But in this position, white played e4 immediately. And one important idea to know is actually that we don't want to take on e4 because it allows white to take on e4 with the knight. And let's say we take, then this bishop is really annoying on this diagonal. So we don't really want to allow this. Instead, this thematic move bishop e7 is actually a good move. And white does get the move e5 in, but after knight h5, the point is that black can take the bishop on g3 at any point. And white chose an interesting move here, knight g5, intending to attack h7 and also going for these for this mass exchange. Yeah, they're attacking the knight h5, they're attacking h7, so bishop h5 is forced. And the thing about this position is that after the complications, queen h5, g6, queen e2, in this position, the computer says that this position is completely equal after the move c takes d4, but then white has the move h4, and this is still theory. After bishop h6 and h5, it's clear to see that despite the computer saying this is equal, I don't like black's chances here at all, because white has the complete initiative in this position. So this is kind of what I mean by finessing the London system, is that we want to choose certain lines that are objectively good, but also prevents us from getting into this dangerous situation. Instead of that, in the game, bishop e7 was played, not taking the potential pawn sacrifice, which is understandable. But after knight f3, c takes d4, and bishop e5, white got a really nice position here. Even the immediate knight takes d4 is really good. This is takes, and if we play bishop e4, then still king f1, and white still has like very strong attacking ideas in this position. So we see that it's a very dangerous position for black as well. If even a strong grandmaster such as Georgiev, very experienced grandmaster, managed to get a bad position even before like move 15 essentially, or right at move 15 in this position. So yeah, that's all I want to show from this game, just showing like a couple of the ideas and the dangers that we should try to avoid. So now let's talk about the theory in the London system itself. So, okay, so after d4, knight f6, of course we can play d5 as well. This is the move that I play. But after knight f3, if you play the thing is that if you play like a g6 system like the Grunfeld or the King's Indian, then this video is not going to apply for you, because white can still play bishop f4, bishop g7, and then pawn to e3, and go for this system where you need to know something else. Normally you put the pawn to d6, knight bd7, put the queen or rook on e8, then go for e5. That's very typical. You put the bishop on b7, but that's completely different from this video. Also notably that you can also play the Nimzo move order with e6, and after bishop f4, you can still go for the move pawn to d5, which transposes to the main line of the London system. But either way, after knight f3, d5, bishop f4, I like the move pawn to e6, not having to worry about any c5, d takes e5 alternatives. And yeah, I also recommend checking this resource in the St. Louis Chess Club, where Grandmaster Robert Hungaski talks about a lot of the different variations in the London system and preparing against it. And after pawn to e3 here, one line that I want to avoid is that if we play the move bishop d6 right now, which seems like it's like in line with what we want to play. We want to play c5 and then bishop d6. Why does it different with the immediate bishop d6? Now I think it's different because white has this move knight e5, and this is a bit annoying because if we would go for castles, knight d2, and then now c5, white can play c3, and they can bring the other knight to f3 really quickly. So this is important that they're bringing the knight to d2 as quick as possible, because after c5, c3, and queen c7, going for the same idea, white can play bishop d3, knight bd7, and bring the other knight to f3. And this is kind of what I want to avoid, yeah, we don't really want to allow this the sequence where white establishes a strong knight on e5. I think that in this position also it's probably better to play the knight c6 actually, with the point after knight d to f3 that we can play maybe the move knight e4 immediately. Yeah, and in this position it's a bit dangerous because there may be like bishop h7 sacrifices if we go for a move like knight d7 here, yeah, or knight g5. Yeah, but in general, yeah, this position is a bit dangerous, I feel, at least. Perfectly playable, but I prefer the move c5. With the idea that I said, as I said before, that black wants to play bishop d6, go for queen c7, and oftentimes go for knight bd7 instead of knight c6 to aim for the e5 advance. And black can delay castling here because they don't want to run into a quick attack from white themselves. And also it's oftentimes that like we just want to wait and see what white does. If white castles, then we can castle, and if white doesn't castle, then we can also consider delaying it. And in this position there are two main moves. I believe that the move knight b to d2 is a bit more flexible and a more sophisticated move order, because it threatens at some point to play pawn to c4 instead of pawn to c3. For example, the line after bishop d6 here, white has the option of either bishop g3 or taking on c5 now. And I just want to show you this idea that after bishop takes c5, white develops the bishop to d3 on this very nice diagonal, and black can play the move knight c6. So this position's okay. For example, after castles, black castles, and the white plays the move c4. So this is what the idea is. And now this enters kind of like a interesting, like, typical Queen's Gambit position, but with the bishop on f4. And the point of c4 here is actually to potentially take on d5. And if we take back with the pawn, then we have an isolated pawn. And if we take back with the knight, then white has a space advantage with the pawn on e3, potentially advancing to e4. But after bishop d6 here, I feel like black's position is perfectly okay. I just don't want to recommend this as the main, this line as the main move, because it becomes quite dry after the bishop exchange. And the point is, after, let's say we take, c takes d5 will always be met with knight takes d5 with a equal game, but position is still very, very balanced, and it's not something that I look forward to playing. So instead of dc5, also bishop g3 is possible, but given that this move bishop d6 is not the main move that I will recommend, let's look at the move knight c6. And as I mentioned, that generally we want to put the knight on d7 instead of c6 when we want to go for this, bishop d6, queen c7 plan. But in this position, I like this move better, because if white goes for the typical c3, the point is that like it's more optimal to deal with the c4 advance if the knight is on c6 instead of d7. And white here has a couple options. They can play bishop b5 or pawn to c3. If they go for bishop b5, this is quite interesting, and the bishop normally doesn't belong here, but there's a very specific idea that after bishop d6, white can either play d takes c5 or castles. For example, they can castle here, and after castles, if they go for a normal play, let's say like bishop d6 and queen d6, black is perfectly fine with like bishop d7. They can put a rook on d8, put a rook on c8, and this bishop on b5 doesn't really do much. I think already black has a very fine position. And given that white has castled also, there's no danger towards the black king. Instead of that, d takes c5 is a more challenging try. After we take back with on c5 with the bishop, white will sooner or later castle, recastle, and the white plays c4, and this is the idea. The thing is that we'll see a very similar position to this, but with the bishop not on b5. And with the bishop on b5, I think that we can simply parry the threat with the move bishop d7, and we get a completely fine game. It's also interesting to go for this move e5, which is worth a try if you want to prepare this long line, but we can often get a lot of compensation for the sacrificed pawn, but this is not going to be my main recommendation. Instead, after c4, black plays bishop d7, and if white plays, let's say, the move rook c1, trying to put pressure on the c-file, black can play queen b6 here. The most active move, simply putting pressure on the bishop, and we can play a6 later to kick the bishop. We can play rook ac8 to get a bit put pressure on the c-file, just in general, I think that the bishop on d7 is really good to deal with the potential threat of bishop takes c6 in this position. So instead of that, c takes d5 is the main move. This was seen in one game between Carlsen and Anand. After knight takes d5, I don't want to ever allow the isolated pawn position if possible. And after bishop g3, with the bishop on b5, we can actually initiate mass exchanges with the move knight e5 here. And the game continued bishop takes d7, but after knight f3, and queen takes d7 here, queen to b3, putting some pressure, on the b file, as well as opening up the default d1 square for the rooks. Black played the move knight b6 and followed it up with queen a4. And with the queens off the board, I think black has no problems here. The position is completely symmetrical, and this is very close to a draw. This position's okay, essentially, is what I want to say. yeah, after bishop d6, okay, that's the line with bishop b5. Instead, white can go for c3, saying that, you know, basically, aha, I've tricked you to play the move knight c6 in this position where you would basically prefer or have the option to play the move bishop d6 followed by queen c7 and then knight bd7. And yeah, this is why I kind of say that this is like the move knight bd2 early on is more of a sophisticated move order. But either way, after knight c6, c3, bishop d6, I think the position is completely fine. After, still, you know, if you ever take on d6, black is perfectly fine. b6, bishop b7, e5 in the future is one possible idea. Instead, white has the move knight e5 here, putting some pressure on the white position, on the black position. But here, the thing is that without the move castling, I like the move queen c7 still, putting pressure on the knight on e5. And after knight d to f3, I like playing the move knight d7 here, simply removing white's best piece on e5. And after the exchange, then black is going to have a completely fine position. Yeah, this position's not dangerous at all. So essentially, yeah, just removing white's best piece on e5 and not castling into the attack is what I want to mention. Instead of knight e5, of course, bishop g3 is the main move, and what we actually saw in the Sarin versus Georgiev game. And here, black will castle. And after the move bishop d3, and in this position, instead of the move b6, which we saw in the game, which ran into e4 potentially, and getting into this, you know, objectively equal but kind of unpleasant position, I like the move g6 here, which is very rare. But the point is that this is first off quite unexplored, and we have the simple idea of like b6 followed by bishop b7, as well as the move knight h5. And in general, we're just like we're just like closing this bishop diagonal and getting a fine position, because white doesn't have the luxury of playing h4, h5, since the threat of bishop h3 is always in the air. So seeing that white doesn't actually have like a very strong attack in this position, and black has a good game here. So g6 is an interesting try, I think, to kind of yeah, challenge your opponent. Though of course more work can be done there. Instead of knight bd2, let's look at the move pawn to c3 in this position, and we will go for this bishop d6 idea. White has a couple moves as well. Kamsky, actually one of the maybe the first person to actually make the London popular, played the move bishop b5 a couple of times. This forces black to play the move knight c6, and white has a couple ideas. They can either play the move bishop g3, just going for more standard positions, but after castles, knight b to d2, I like this move bishop e7. It's a very interesting move. This actually transposes to one of the big variations in the move, in the fourth move bishop d6. So instead of, you know, if you remember the position before black plays the move c5, black can also play the move bishop d6 as we saw, and this is one of the main positions in that variation. And here, the main point of bishop e7 is that we actually want to play the move knight h5. For example, if white castles here, we can play knight h5. And since white is castled, it means that taking on g3 is always like a serious threat. And so we want to take off the bishop pair, double the pawns, and opening up of the h file is you know, becomes a big benefit for black actually. Instead of that, the main move here is to play the move bishop d3, simply regrouping the bishop to a more aggressive diagonal. But again, we will go for this move knight h5. And this is the point of bishop e7, right? So now even bishop h4 is not possible since we have the bishop on e7. And the thing is that we need to be careful of ever taking on g3, since white has it castled, and if we take on g3, then that will open up the h file. So in this position, there are a couple moves. White can play knight e5, a very aggressive, though it's not very good here. We first off play the move g6, so as we saw before, this is a typical move, just cutting out this bishop's diagonal. After knight d to f3, I like the move c takes d4, simplifying the position in the center a bit, not allowing white to take on c5 at some point. After e takes d4, we will play the move f6. And the thing is that this position is very uncomfortable. If white takes on c6 here, then after bishop b takes e6 here, black will simply play the move bishop d6, go for rook e8, and then advance to the center with e5. And black has a really nice pawn mass in the center. Instead of that, the best move in this position is actually to go for the sacrifice, knight takes g6, because the knight doesn't have a good place to go or retreat to. But black gets an advantage here after h takes g6. If you take on g6 with the bishop, this is quite bad. After knight g7, one idea is maybe to go bishop c2 to line up the queen on this diagonal, but after king f7, black simply escapes here. Let's say queen d3, and then now knight f5. with a winning position. Yeah, the king simply runs away. So instead of bishop takes g6, this one game in the correspondence database has seen the move knight h4. The point is to take on g6 with the knight, but black simply retreats with knight g7, and after knight takes g6, rook f7, not giving away any material. And the thing is that here, if white plays typical like a slow move here like queen d2, maybe threatening queen h6, black has the move knight f5, and they're completely fine here because first off, maybe we have the threat of rook g7. If you take on f5 here, let's say here h4, black plays a move bishop f8, and I think they consolidate here. Essentially, if white ever castles long, then black will have really quick play on the queen side with like bishop d7, knight a5 coming to c4, and even the move queen a5 there, with an advantage in this position. Instead, the best move instead of queen d2 is to play queen g4 with the point that it's provoking f5 to weaken the control over the e5 square. But at the same time, we shut down one of white's pieces on d3, and after queen e2 and bishop d6, yeah, the game continued. There's a threat of maybe f4 at some point. Let's say if you castle, I believe queen g5 actually even wins a piece here. Or is it like maybe bishop d6 first? Yeah, maybe this one first. No, actually, this one allows the knight to escape on f4. So I think it's like queen g5 first. And after king b1, then you can take on g3 here. There's probably more challenging move, but yeah, it doesn't look good for white here. I'm sure some move wins here. I'm not entirely sure on the details, but it does win. Instead, in this game, in this correspondence game, bishop takes d6 was played. After queen takes d6, long castles, black played the move bishop d7, and I think that if you want to check the full details of this game, you can check this study that I will link down below, and you can see that the full game continued where basically black plays move rook f6 next, and with somewhat unusual play but very accurate play, the knight on g6 is forced to move away, let's say to e5, and then the rook goes on h6 and is able to parry all the threats. And simply, if you look at this position, white doesn't have enough pieces to go for the attack here, especially with this bishop on d3 already shut down. So black has an advantage there, and all they need to do is consolidate. Instead of knight e5 immediately, white has the move queen e2 here, very standard play, delaying castling for as long as possible. And here again, I like the move g6, just a useful move in general, preventing this bishop from reigning free, and also asking now white what they want to do. Because if they simply castle, then now we will take on g3, and we have an advantage here because of the double pawns, and white doesn't have an attack anymore on the h-file. Instead of that, d takes c5 is possible. I just want to show that it's kind of hard for white to find a good move in this position. So d takes c5 is one idea, but after bishop takes e5, black will play rook e8 and go for e5 if possible, and they'll also play the move a5 to get some space on the queen side. And white just never has a good place to put their king. If they castle short, then again we'll take on g3, and otherwise castling long would be very dangerous. So yeah, we have a good position here. And instead of the move bishop g3 in this position, which is more standard, the idea behind this specific variation normally is to take on c6 now and force the double pawns on black's position. And after bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, queen a4. This was played a couple of times at the top level, I think that black has no problems after the simple move castles. And there are a couple of things to know. For example, after knight b to d2, c takes d4, just preparing to challenge the center later with c5 again and undoubling the pawns. In this position, the only move to play in this position is c takes d4, because if you take on d4 with the pawn, then black surprisingly has a really good move here, which is the move knight h5, threatening infiltration to f4. And after, let's say, white castles, black can even play the move f6 with the threat of e5, so rook a to e1 makes a lot of sense. But now g5, and then suddenly black has the threat of g4, as well as just sticking the knight on f4. Black has also ideas of a5 followed by bishop a6 to potentially trap the rook there, or even the simple a5 followed by bishop d7 to develop there and still defend the e6 pawn. So black has a really good position here and already has an initiative. So instead of e takes d4, c takes d4 is better, but now black breaks with c5. And it's just one key idea to know here, is that if white plays the move queen a3, just pinning the pawn, it seems like we're going to be losing a pawn. Black has a really nice move, queen a6, and because the white king hasn't castled, this move is possible. For example, if you take on c5 with the queen, then after rook to b8, attacking b2, white can't play b3 here because after bishop d7, rook f to c8, and as well as bishop b5, both the queen and the king are in trouble here. So instead of that, queen a3 is better, but after we take and we go bishop a6, black again has really good pressure and compensation for the pawn. It's just after knight b3, bishop c4 is possible here, but I found that it maybe simplifies too much. Black can simply play the move rook f to c8, keeping out the pressure. Still, the white king can't castle, so knight c5 makes a lot of sense. But now I like the move rook b6. I've checked bishop b5, but I think rook b6 is a bit better. So now taking on a6 here would be very bad, since these pawns would be very, very weak. So instead of that, knight to d2 is better, maybe threatening knight b3 at some point. But now we can play knight e4, and this is a nice pawn sacrifice. So first off, if they take on e4, okay, it's clear that like they don't want to take with the c5 knight because the c5 knight's important to block the c file. But so if they take with the d knight, and here they can't take on e4 again because we have the nice move rook c2, threatening rook e2 check, and also doubling up of the rooks on the second rank. So now knight c5, but now bishop c4, and the white king is just seriously in trouble. We can simply double up, and the white king is gonna get destroyed there. Instead, king d1 is better, just trying to potentially take the e4 pawn later. But black has first off the nice move rook pawn to e5, just undermining the potentially the outpost on c5 here. Rook c1, defending the rook, defending the knight. But now rook d8, increasing the pressure. White's best move is king d2. But now, since the e4 pawn is hanging, I like the move f5, and there's some interesting initiative here. The point is that knight takes a6 is never a problem because we can always take back with the rook, and these pawns are very weak. And we're also putting pressure on the center. So after the best play, which is king c3, just defending the d4 pawn, e takes d4, e takes d4, black can play the move bishop b7, preparing the move bishop b5 next, targeting a2 and also centralizing the bishop. So for example, best is rook b1, challenging black for the b file, but now after d5, bishop d5, rook b6, a b6, knight e4, and now we hit the knight with b5, knight b6, and now bishop takes a2. We restore material equality. So it seems like we're able to restore material equality at the very end, and yeah, we kind of like ask a lot of questions to the white pieces. So I do like this variation as a possible test to your opponent. Yeah, so this is the line. Of course, it's not forced, but it's possible. Queen takes c5. Instead, d takes c5 is a bit is also possible, but after queen a3, b8, and bishop a6, again we have a lot of compensation here. Rook a to b8, rook f to c8, and even an eventual knight to e4 to hit the c5 pawn will eventually give us back the material. For example, knight b3 can always be met with like bishop c4, and yeah, we have good play here. So yeah, after c takes d4, pawn to c5, if white decides to castle in this position, then I like to play the move c takes d4, and e takes d4 would just give white an isolated pawn, so they don't want to do that. They want to play queen takes d4. But now I like the move bishop a6, hitting the rook f to c1, and now knight d7, preparing the move e5, also covering some of the dark squares here on the queen side. E4 is challenging, but now after rook f to d8, the point is that e takes d5 will always be met with knight b6, making use of this pin, and now black can always recapture with either the knight or the queen even. And the knight on d5 would be very centrally placed. So instead, h3 is better, just like a waiting move, but now black can play h6 also, a useful move. After pawn to e5, queen to b6, black has also good play down the b file, as well as later challenging the rook on the c file. So this is no problem for black. So let's go back to this position before the move bishop b5. And instead of bishop b5 check in this position, white also has the move bishop g3, which is the main move and something that I expect most London players to actually play. Just, maintaining the pressure again. And here we will go for queen c7, knight bd2, and now knight bd7. And I already really like black's position here. If we get this set up, I think that black has really good chances to fight for an advantage. Even though the position says that it's equal, if you look at the statistics, black is doing like really, really well here. So yeah, after the move knight bd7, white normally plays bishop d3. Now we'll castle, and if white castles here in this position, now we will take on g3, doubling the pawns. And if we go for the immediate e5, I think it runs into the possibility of e4. It makes the position a bit more murky, and it's objectively equal. So instead of that, we will first prepare the move pawn to e5 by playing the move b6, so that now we can get control over the e4 square. And yeah, any e4 advances, for example, in this position, just gives black a good game. After we take on d4, c takes d4, we take on e4 now, and what happens is that white simply gets an isolated pawn in this position. We get the bishop on the long diagonal. White has also double pawns on the g file, and overall, I just really like black's position in this game. And black will simply play a move like rook a c8, rook ft8, maybe retreat the queen back to b8 if necessary. You know, for example, rook c1. And I think already black has a slight advantage here. At least if not from a objective sense, just a practical sense. So yeah, that essentially covers this the London system. We see that even in the main line is, like, I believe, not super challenging if we get this idea of, you know, playing bishop d6, queen c7, and knight b to d7. It's just that there are a lot of sidelines and a lot of different systems that white can go for instead of this main line. So just be prepared, and I'm sure you're going to do fine. So thanks so much for watching this video. Again, check out the coaching link if you're interested, and thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.